Okay, it's my pleasure to bring to you another story of recovery from fibromyalgia. Today I'm speaking with Beth Terrence from the US. Hi, Beth. How are you doing?
I'm great. Happy to be here and excited to chat with you tonight.
Yeah, look, thank you for coming to share your story. It's nice now that I'm actually finding a lot more people actually approaching me and finding the site to share their story. It is really an amazing journey to come through something like fibromyalgia. Tell me, can you tell me a little bit, what happened when you first started to get unwell? How did it come about?
Yeah, well, I was diagnosed when I was 20, but I'll just say, and I was in college at the time, but I had a number of the symptoms through my teenage years.
Right.
And then at that time, they sort of escalated and became more severe, to the point where I was having difficulty functioning and getting out of bed and having a lot of chronic pain, back pain, and I had always had migraines. I was actually, as a child and a teen, and then around this time in college, had mononucleosis, and so so I had a very weakened immune system.
Yes.
Dealt with a lot of sore throats and lymph nodes, and so it was kind of like my health had been already an issue, and just seemed like that was just I was just sort of on the weaker side in terms of getting sick and feeling low energy and things like that. But around that time, I had the mono again while I was in my first year of college, and started having some pretty severe pain. Sometimes I couldn't get out of bed, but because I was tired. There was the fatigue and the heaviness, but also there were times where my neck would spasm or my lower back would spasm. I could barely get out of bed or walk. So it just seemed to really escalate around that time. And I was also, I was in school, and as a young person, excited to kind of be learning and beginning my life, but I was finding it really difficult to get to classes, and even when I could, I was having difficulty, focusing, so I was having some of that, fogginess and things like that, so it was very challenging.
Yes.
And I really, at some point, I had to drop, after my second year, I had to drop out of college.
Right. And, until you got your diagnosis of fibromyalgia, what did you think was going on with yourself? This is a scary time. It's a scary time. All these things are going wrong. And if you're probably like most people, I suspect you went to lots of different doctors. What were you feeling? What was going through your head?
Yeah, it was, I was a little bit used to being sick a lot. So that wasn't, that was, as I mentioned, I had a lot of that growing up as a child, but particularly through my teenage years, had times where like I'd be out of school for a week, or like on and off antibiotics a lot, and so I was used to that. But the real, it was really challenging, the energy, the low energy, the severity of that, and the pain. It was just tremendous pain, and in addition to that, I was definitely experiencing some depression and anxiety, and sort of emotional feelings as well. So
as you'd expect.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't, I was a little bit. I lived in New York City at the time. I was going to college there, and I didn't, have the best support system.
Yes.
Being in a dorm, living in a dorm in the infirmary was like maybe 12 city blocks away, and so I was, recalling how one day I woke up and I couldn't even stand up straight, but I walked myself 12 blocks to the infirmary.
Right.
I kind of bent over through the streets of New York City, and I could kind of giggle about it now, but I don't even know how I did that then, and they gave me some muscle relaxers or pain meds and things.
Yes.
But it was very hard that was the other thing, even after the way that I got diagnosed was around that time, a friend of our family had been diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus.
Yes.
And which all of those were this was in the late 1980s, was still kind of newer, in terms of a diagnosis. And so, but they had seen a specialist in the city where I lived, and so I went to see her, and she had been actually doing research with other doctors around that time because they were seeing a lot of more patients with these kinds of symptoms. So,
Right.
so she diagnosed me with, we thought it might be Epstein-Barr, but fibromyalgia, which I was kind of like, fibro what? I had not heard that word before.
Yes.
And, and it was kind of, I think that definitely added, to the depression a little bit because I felt like now I have this disease. I don't even know what it is. And there weren't a lot of answers about it. And
yes.
At the time, it certainly seemed like a life sentence, and a lot of times people still think that too. So,
yes.
But I believe now that it's not.
Sure. It's always a different perspective on the other side, isn't it? How many years? So what happened from then? Once you got the diagnosis, how long were you sick before you had a turnaround?
So I had to drop out of college for about a year, and I'd already been kind of, really depleted in that year. I honestly spent a lot of time in bed. I a couple times attempted to go back to school, but couldn't. So, I was really just kind of in the symptoms and not knowing what to do. But I did. When I was younger in high school, early high school years, I actually started studying yoga and meditation. And so I'd had that as a little bit of a foundation. And when I found, I guess when I went away to college, I kind of lost that a little bit. So in that time period, I started coming back to that a little bit. Mm-hmm. When I could. There were some days I couldn't get out of bed or maybe just a little bit. But I tried to do a little yoga when I could. And I tried to practice meditation even if I had to do it in bed. And the other thing that I started doing, and I was going to different doctors here and there during that year, and I would say for many number of years after that, sometimes I'd hear about someone, a doctor who was helpful for someone, and I just found there weren't many solutions, at least in terms of conventional medicine, and the treatments were usually muscle relaxers and maybe antidepressants, and that didn't work for me at all,
Yes.
So, and I know for a lot of people that's the case, just really wasn't able to function. And I did want to, my motivator was wanting to go back to college and start my life. I was a young person. So, yeah. So, and the other thing that I started to explore just a little bit during that time was I had always been a little bit interested in, vitamins and supplements, and my father was really always into that. So I had a little bit of awareness about that, so I started exploring with some different supplements, and I did, I think it was a combination of maybe just taking that year to just, let my body be where it needed to be and kind of nurturing it in terms of the yoga and meditation and, taking some supplements and things that I was, I got a little bit stronger and was able to go back to college after that. And when I was reflecting a little bit before we talked, just to kind of, because it's been quite a while, it's amazing that I was able to do that. I think it was just my internal motivation that allowed me to do that because I struggled for the next 2 years through college, and I was able to graduate, and I didn't do the best, and I, over the years, have looked back and think, I really, wasn't a great student. I wasn't focused, but I was really struggling with, symptoms of fibromyalgia, during that time. So.
But, I hear this quite often, and sometimes people say things like, oh, well, this person wasn't that well because they were able to do this, and this person was really sick, and people try and make judgments, but, what I've found is that some people are just incredibly powerful to still do things whilst they're ill. I mean, mm-hmm. it takes an amazing mindset, and it's probably this mindset is actually very common in people with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. They tend to be real go-getters, and to be able to even graduate and then go through university whilst you're suffering the way you must have been is a tremendous achievement, but perhaps in it also lies a little bit of the lessons as to why people are sick in the first place, because we tend to push ourselves a bit hard.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the tools I came to much later on was the Bach flower remedies. I don't know if you're familiar with those. They're flower essences.
Right.
And they were created by Dr. Edward Bach, who was a British physician who really focused on treating the whole person.
Yes.
But one of the things that I learned, they have different remedies for all different emotions and conditions, but there's some that are focused on drive, they call it, and obviously drive is a positive thing, but if we're overdriven, can be a negative thing because we deplete ourselves, and so I do find with my personal experience and with other people I met who have fibromyalgia and chronic conditions that that's definitely a pattern, of push. I call it push, crash.
Yes,
that's
push,
sort of
crash.
the term. Because even when you get a little more energy, you tend to be ready to get going again, and then can crash. And that's sort of just the rhythm. It seems to me the rhythm of the condition. I'd have a time where I could kind of move through things, and then I'd kind of take a dive again. And it was over that pretty much 8 to 10 years till I became symptom free. It was up and down a lot, and then eventually there was sort of it would go up and down a little bit and then up again and down, so that I was getting progressively better,
yes.
But there would still be dips. Mm-hmm.
Well, and there are very real physiological reasons for why that occurs. I think people have to think of it, it's a bit like a Monopoly game. If you sell all your properties, there's no more money coming in. And it's a little bit like that with your health. When you push too hard and you have to sell your property, so to say, your ability to generate energy gets diminished. And tell me, so your recovery was really quite gradual, or was there a certain turning point where you suddenly went, wow, I think I can really get better? What was your experience with that?
I have a couple answers for that. So after college, I started working, and it was kind of the same thing. I found it challenging because I was very motivated, and yet there were these times where I would get sick, or just feel worse and have to miss work. And so it was a struggle in that way. But I continued to focus on, I got really much more into diet and nutrition, and so was constantly exploring that and different supplements. And I became, I guess, pretty health conscious in terms of that. And also continued to do meditation and yoga, and so focused on the spiritual, just as my personal practice. I didn't, even at that point, I think I didn't so much connect it to the healing process.
Yes.
As just it was, it was sort of, something a passion that my heart felt called to do. But over time, I did start to notice I would feel better. And if I, found certain combinations of things I was doing, I would feel much better.
Yes.
So it was sort of a gradation. And then at some point, a few years out of school, I was working. I had very bad migraines from the time I was, probably, I don't even think prior to my teen years, but definitely through the teenage years and into college and adulthood, that were very debilitating. And a friend recommended a chiropractor for me. And so as I started going to the chiropractor, my migraines got better, some of my pain got better. And so I found that really helped during that time. And so I just kind of, I guess what I learned, and particularly from the experiences I had with doctors who, at that point, a lot of times the message you got was it's all in your head, or, it's just, you have to deal with it, and so I really felt like at some point I had the awareness that, I needed to take responsibility for my own health and my own healing process. And part of that was doing research. I would do a lot of reading and a lot of research and trying different things. And then, as I said, some worked and some didn't work, or certain combinations. So over a period of time, I would say I felt about 60 or 70% better over a period of maybe 7 years or so.
Mm-hmm. So that's 7 years after your diagnosis?
Yeah, after my diagnosis, yeah.
Which is probably almost 10 years into your illness, if you really think about the symptoms.
Right, yeah, probably, maybe even longer, yeah. And what I found was, at that point, I actually felt well enough. I went to school for massage therapy because I was really drawn to sort of helping and healing. And one thing I noticed, I worked in an office, and I was a nonprofit organization. I was very passionate about it, but working in an office, I found one of the things I know, that other people experience too is the sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very sensitive to fluorescent lights.
Mm-hmm.
And something about sitting all day at a computer and a desk, was really challenging for me.
Yeah.
And I think, and then there was kind of a stressful environment too. So I don't know, at some point opportunity came to go to massage school, and it seemed like that was going to be challenging physically, but I did at that point, feel well enough physically to attempt it. And what I found in that year, it was my learning to give massage, but I was also receiving a lot of massage. And also the school I went to, we studied shiatsu and Chinese medicine, so it kind of gave me that model to work with.
Yes.
So I started understanding more about healing in a holistic way, and also I think really, resolving some of the energy and emotion I was holding in my body too. That was like sort of a next step.
Yes, and look, that's an important thing, and I want to talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But before I do, can I ask you, can you describe what your pain was like? Did you have the tender points? Did you find that it was in a certain area? Was it mainly up in the neck, or was it all in your legs as well, or was it a daily thing? Did it come and go? Can you tell me a bit more about your experience?
Sure. Yeah, I would say it varied, but I did have a lot of pain in my neck and shoulders areas,
mm-hmm.
Particularly that occipital area. And I would have frequent, I had a lot of the sort of burning soreness kind of pain, but then I would get spasms also where I'd kind of,
yes.
I'd wake up and my head would be stuck to the left.
Right.
One day, and maybe another day it might be another way.
Yes.
I did also have some lower back pain.
Yes.
And what I learned over the years for me, for whatever reason, the lower back, and particularly my left hip more than the right, that was sort of when I had higher stress that would kick in.
Right.
Yeah. And then sometimes overall muscle soreness, like almost like the flu kind of feeling.
Yes.
So that was, it just really varied. But the other thing was I had a lot of knee pain from a teenage years, and I was diagnosed with something called Osgood-Schlatter's, mm-hmm. which has to do with the growth of your knees, but that sort of continued. It was almost like an arthritic thing in my knees.
Right.
Yeah, that continued during that time.
Yes. Yes. And this chronic pain, I mean, how did you feel when one of those pain sessions would come on? Because I assume it wavered. It would go, and then it'd come back, and you'd get these flare-ups. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. During the time period I was talking about, it would come in waves. Where sometimes there'd be a period I'd have it a little bit, and then an acute, and then maybe not. I would say for that period, at least the first 7 years, it wasn't a time I didn't. Not have it at all,
Yes. So
yeah, it was there, but sometimes it was sort of low level, versus high level.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. And did you, this might sound like a strange question to you, but, did you find that your ability to deal with the pain or how you felt about when the pain came on, did that change over the years? How did you feel when the pain came on? Is it something that you...
it was hopeless. It felt hopeless to me for sure. And I did cope. I didn't take the medication. The other thing which came up for me, just related to treatment and just in general, I'm very sensitive chemically, and so I would have, if anybody was going to have a reaction to a medication, I would have it.
Yes.
So I really found the medications, that were recommended, which, really were only treating symptoms in any case, but I would have a reaction a lot of the time. So I really didn't take any medications. I might use some over-the-counter, like anti-inflammatory kinds of things. but just helped a little bit, but not too much. And I have to say, during my probably, 20s, I self-medicated a little bit, sometimes with alcohol or,
Yes.
Things like that. So just because it helped, just to kind of numb out a little bit.
Yes. Did you ever develop any alcohol intolerance?
Intolerance.
Like that you
Yeah, I mean, I
drink alcohol without starting to feel drastically worse. Did that ever happen later on?
Yeah, well, no, I never really had that happen. I just kind of, at some point as I healed, I didn't need it anymore, and when you feel good, you don't really want to alter that either. So.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. And, so then, what happened next? I mean, you just gradually got better, you were doing the massage, and you found that.
Yeah, I was able to work as a massage therapist, so I mean, that signals, that there was such a huge from where I was when I graduated college to, that point I was able to work as a massage therapist, and I actually felt better. I found working outside, not in an office, not a 9-to-5 job. I had to learn to take care of myself, how many massages I could do a week and, needing days, a couple days in a row off. Yeah. But I felt much better. But still had, I still had some symptoms come and go at different times, and the headaches definitely had gotten better, but they would come sometimes, and then some of the pain would, come and go. But one thing, I guess, maybe a year or two after that, I got in a car accident. It was kind of a minor car accident, but when I went back to the chiropractor, instead of it helping, it made things much, much worse. And so I ended up going to see another kind of chiropractor, which it's called network spinal analysis or network chiropractic, which is more of it's a subtler form of chiropractic. They don't force anything. They just use touch work along the spine to help access the core tension in your body, and then it begins to self-correct. Right. So a series of events sort of happened around that time. So one was I had this accident and I started getting this different kind of treatment. And the other was I had a couple times over the years people had recommended to me to work with the Bach flowers, and I actually started working with a practitioner that year. And then I also was doing some training in a kind of work called PEER, which is a kind of emotional release work. Right. So suddenly, and the network chiropractic works on a lot of levels, but seems to help with the emotional body. So I didn't kind of totally realize what was happening at the time, but pretty quickly I did within a year or two that I was really, during that time, intensely addressing my emotional body, and not, I had done therapy and some talking kind of therapy and things over the years, but addressing the emotions in a more energetic way, it was the thing that really took me to being symptom-free. It was just, healing, and I had, some of it was having to work through some of the, trauma I had experienced growing up, and some of a lot of suppressed emotions that I'd been holding in, and I do think sometimes there's a correlation with people having, emotions that are suppressed or repressed, and perhaps trauma, and these kinds of conditions.
It's interesting that you say that, Beth, because and most of the people I speak to, they bring this up themselves. They know certain experiences that they've had, and when they address some of these things, it's often when they make their breakthrough. They tend to do a whole lot of things, as you have, lots of treatments, but the emotional work is often their breakthrough. So, can you tell us a little bit more about this emotional work? Like, what kind of, how were the emotional traumas addressed? Is it like through talking therapy, or how does that work?
No, I always laugh. I had lied on the couch for quite a number of years in traditional, therapy and also just talk therapies. And that had helped me, and particularly, I think, going through what I was going through with, the condition and the emotions, it had helped me. I don't know if I would have made it through without that.
Yeah. Do you think it's more traumatic than having fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome?
Yeah, I believe that. Yes.
Yes.
But what I found, and I guess I learned this a little bit as I moved into body work doing massage, and I had also actually the other thing that happened a little prior to that was I'd studied Reiki, so and through the yoga and meditation, I kind of always had some awareness about energy.
Yes.
But so I was really kind of deepening into the understanding of, you know, not just obviously we have our physical body, but that we're energetic beings, and so addressing ourselves energetically through all the different levels, body, mind, emotion, spirit,
yes.
You know, was important. But I found, and I, at least for myself, you know, and so that's kind of how I came to a holistic approach. But I found really healing the emotional body in an energetic way is really important. And so, so the tools I used during that year, you know, the network, which was more receiving a treatment, but it was working on a subtle level. The emotional release work I did was actually, it's a process that I have trained in, founded by a man named John Lee, who did a lot of work with people in recovery, in addition to doing with anger work and things like that. But so it's a little bit of you work with a practitioner or partner, but you release through the body, because a lot of emotions get stored in the physical body, you know, even in our muscles, you know, and things like that. And so there's some physical form of release. It could be twisting a towel or pounding a pillow or something like that, you know.
Yes.
There's different ways to do it depending on what. Sometimes it's more crying it out, you know, and a lot of time. And I know I had been pretty shut down emotionally, so I had grown up, my mother was mentally ill and untreated for most of my life until actually beyond my college years. So, so there was a lot of trauma and I grew up alone with her from 11 years old on.
Yes.
So I had a lot of trauma and I was really shut down emotionally. I didn't really cry or express emotions, and, you know, had a lot that I needed to express. So,
yes.
So I was starting to release some of that in a, you know, supported, safe way. But the other thing that I can't speak highly enough about is the Bach flower remedies, which they're, you know, again, they're flower essences, but they treat emotional states and personality traits, and they're working similar to homeopathic medicine. So they work vibrationally. They're not like a drug or an herb. But I found they just help me tremendously with emotional healing, and they work kind of like in a lot of holistic healing. We talk about like it being like an onion, and an onion has a lot of layers, and so do we. And so some things might go to the core of the onion, but the Bach flowers work at that outer level, like what you're feeling and experiencing on a daily basis.
Right.
And as they help balance that, that kind of dissipates and another layer might emerge. So I think they work in terms of helping to balance the emotions, but they also help to strengthen and stabilize your overall energy field.
Yes.
And this is something that I really, I mentioned the push-push. There's 3 patterns that I really associate with fibromyalgia and maybe some, you know, chronic fatigue as well. And, you know, that push-push-crash pattern was one, and we talked about the other about, you know, sort of being driven or motivated, but also control and having difficulty letting go, I think is one. But the third is sort of that there is an energetic, when we talk, you know, sensitivity, whether energetic or emotional, but I call it sponginess, basically, like our energy field, you know, whether it has holes in it or just it's more open, so we tend to take on other people's energy and emotions rather than maybe, you know, if we were a little more solid energetically, then things might bounce off of us. And I think that and there's a lot of different ways to work with that, you know, but I think the Bach flowers are one tool that can really support that. Yes. And the emotional healing. And for me, I think it was the combination of those things, and as I became more aware of needing to heal myself emotionally, that, you know, I moved into really being free of symptoms.
You know, Beth, it can be a bit of a hard pill to swallow when you hear people talking like this, because if you remember how offended you were when the doctor said it was all in your head, and so to go from that and then to talk about emotional healing, it's obviously quite a journey. I mean, the doctors used to say to you that the illness is all in your head. What did they mean by that? Did they mean that you were making up the symptoms?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I don't think they knew at that point in time. And honestly, yeah, I don't see that many doctors these days, but I hear from people who are, more recently diagnosed or working on sort of getting answers that there's not that many answers now either. So, I think, they might be saying it's, a mental, emotional thing. And, or just imagined thing too, was kind of, especially earlier on, that was sort of the sense that I got. Yes. It was just like you're a, hypochondriac almost, like you have all these symptoms, but, yes. There's nothing wrong with you really. Just kind of deal with it was the attitude that I felt, I got a lot of the time. Yeah. Yeah.
It's, the height of rudeness. And I'll tell you what, so many different symptoms, so you'd have to have one hell of an imagination.
Yeah,
make that all up.
Yeah, but that certainly doesn't help.
But interesting enough, I guess you're saying you made this breakthrough where you really let go of the illness, where the illness went from managing, from being, low symptoms to being well, was through emotional work.
Yeah, I feel that. I feel like, and as I said, in my work now, I have an integrative holistic approach, and so I work with people for a variety of reasons. But I really feel clear, it took me like I said, that 8 or 10 years to recover because I didn't come to that until the end,
Yes.
But if you start at that place and obviously everybody, based on where you are, your ability to start, but because there are, a lot of different ways to work on emotional healing. And I think spiritual healing is a part of it too, which again, I've sort of been doing that without necessarily realizing I was doing that.
Yes. Yes.
And then sort of more focused on that. And I did eventually study shamanic healing, which is really is really about helping people reconnect with themselves and return to wholeness. And so, and I had already been recovered at that point, but I think that just supported my overall well-being. And so I think, if people come to, the awareness that, to work holistically, look at body, mind, emotion, spirit, but I think particularly really look at that emotional and maybe spiritual aspects. I think, recovery can be not as lengthy as it was for me.
And obviously, look, at this for anyone listening, I want to make it very clear, no one is suggesting that the illness is imagined. We know it's a real physical illness with lots of physical problems, lots of physical dysfunctions, every hormone, every, cellular process. I mean, it's a very, very real physical illness. So just want to make that point very clear.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah. And I just want to, and yes. And, again, I really hold the perspective that we are, whether we see ourselves as energetic or spiritual beings, and that, everything is a manifestation of all, of all of that.
It's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected. So, but I mean, clearly, when we have physical symptoms and experiences, can't deny that, and that there's an aspect.
Yeah.
That's just an aspect of who we are. And I just wanted to share, Dr. Bach, who I mentioned, who created the Bach flowers. He had been studied bacteriology and immunology early on, and then was in a private practice with patients. And what he found was that he couldn't treat two patients the same, even if they had the same condition like diabetes or heart disease, that it was important to address their emotions and personality traits specifically, and that then their greater healing would occur. And then when he developed the remedies, he was kind of in tune with nature and saw the benefit of the different flowers. He was able to connect them with different emotions. But he really taught about treating the whole person, which obviously is the basis of holistic healing, but said that disease in itself is beneficent, that it has something to help us, and it's showing us where maybe we're out of alignment with where our personality and our soul are out of alignment. And so it's just showing us where we need, to work and give attention. And, I think fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and any disease, it's trying to tell us something that we need to look at ourselves and care for ourselves in a different way than we have been.
Yeah, look, very wise words, Beth. I appreciate you sharing your message and your thoughts. Look, one other thing I'd like to ask you is, obviously at some point you made this connection that you needed to do some emotional healing. And did you at that point you didn't necessarily make the connection that to your fibromyalgia, you just felt that's something you needed to do. It was only afterwards, I guess, when you saw the difference that you made the connection. Would that be fair to say? Or did you make...
Yes, I was a little bit of both.
Yes. Did you...
I think because I'd been doing some body work and things like that, I was seeing the connection.
With other people.
Yeah, but I don't think I had the understanding until after I was symptom-free how much the impact would have of doing that emotional work.
Did you, I mean, it's scary, isn't it? I mean, you know, you've gone through all this stuff, you've carried all this stuff for so many years of your life. How did you overcome the fear of facing this?
You mean in terms of...
Yeah, in terms of facing the emotional healing. I mean, were you scared of addressing this? It's kind of like, you know, it's. I guess some people think of it as a pressure cooker, and you're too afraid to take the lid off. Did you, you know, was there a lot of anxiety about addressing some of your skeletons in the closet, so to say?
It's a good question. I guess, you know, one thing is I had been doing, as I mentioned, some talk therapy prior to that, so I had some awareness about it.
Right.
So at least maybe the details of things, although, you know, again, I had some suppressed or repressed emotions. But what I guess, and I think this is my sense, you know, everybody's different, and in terms of, you know, I did find some support in terms of the practitioners I was working with and the community I was, you know, exploring with, that there was a lot of support. And safety was very important, you know, creating that when working with someone else. And, you know, for myself, I was conscious of that. But the other thing is having the support of like a tool like the Bach flowers and doing some body and energy work really supported that, because, you know, because there's a lot of healing that can occur on the energetic level, you know, and I find that that's one of the differences with maybe doing, you know, more talking kind of therapy than maybe somatic or other, you know, now there's so many different kinds of therapy that, you know, that it can be experienced in a maybe gentler way, you know, and yet still very deep and profound.
Yes. Well,
but yeah, there was some, you know, it wasn't easy. I would say it was, you know, it's not an easy process necessarily, but
yeah. As you know, I'm sure that the other people listening who feel maybe they need to do this emotional healing and they may not necessarily have access to the Bach flower therapies or some of the other emotional healing that you've mentioned. Have you found in your experience that there's many other ways? I mean, what are some other accessible ways that are actually that you have found most effective for people to do some of this emotional healing and to let go of trauma? Is there any other sort of comments you'd like to make around that?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of different ways, and again, I'm definitely a proponent of exploring and finding tools that best support you, and even, you know, with each person at different times, you need different things. I mean, I do find some type of body or energy work really helps support that, and a lot of healing, you know, can come through that.
Right. So
and
like
again,
Reiki therapy?
Like Reiki, or I do a modality also called Zero Balancing,
right.
Which is a bridge between body and energy work, but it's very good for helping clear or release trauma from the body, and emotions that are stored there. You know, the network I mentioned, Network Chiropractic, is very good. There's, you know, craniosacral therapy. There's many kinds. So, and I think they all are working on a lot of different levels, and even, you know, and I think I do personally believe that some kind of work like that, it helps support the body and the emotions and, the energy system, and particularly for fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and conditions like that, you need that kind of support. Your body needs, some nurturing and support, and sometimes massage is hard for people because it causes too much inflammation or irritation.
Yeah.
So some of the more subtle modalities might be better. The Bach flowers are a wonderful tool. And they're meant to be a self-healing tool. So there's 38 different remedies, and sometimes it's beneficial to work with a practitioner for a period of time to, kind of dive into it and learn, but they're meant to be used on your own as well. That's how Dr. Bach created them. So that's, and then, sometimes therapy can be a part of that. And there's different kinds of therapy. And sometimes more spiritual healing, like the shamanic healing work is great. Meditation, yoga. I just really encourage people to explore, and try different things and see, how you feel and what serves you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, look, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, Beth. I think that is fantastic advice. Look, how does it feel to be recovered? When you first recovered, did you just sort of, was a part of you still worried that symptoms would come back? Did you almost feel strange? Because I guess you probably never as an adult had experience being fully well. It must have been a bit of a strange, surreal experience for you.
Yeah, I think it took me a while I definitely knew I felt well. And I really dove into, I'd already become a holistic practitioner and was doing massage and energy work, and I quickly added the Bach flowers to my repertoire. I started studying more. So that, helped me, to feel hopeful about life, whereas for a long time I hadn't been hopeful.
Yes.
In a number of different ways, but particularly that, I just would never be well enough to, find my path in life, I guess. And then I had. So that was a great gift. But there was, I would say, I still for a period of time had some fear or anxiety that, it would return,
Yes.
And there were, in those years sort of when I felt, the beginning of feeling fully recovered, I had to pay attention and take really good care of myself. I still feel like there was a healing and a gradation happening, in terms of moving away from the symptoms.
Yes.
And I found, if I didn't, I had put a really good, in addition to all the work I had done, self-care in place. And if I neglected that, like I might feel, a day where I felt a little tired or, achy, and I just had to really monitor that for, probably a few more years after that. So,
right. So how long has it been now that you have been completely well?
It's been about 15 years.
Wow. How wonderful.
Yeah.
And so you can say now you've had more years being well than being sick. That's a good thing.
That's correct. Yeah. It's amazing.
It changes your perspective on life, going through something like that. I think nobody really appreciates what a gift a daily experience of health is, more than somebody who has recovered from fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome.
I agree. Yeah, it's just that, a lot of people still don't feel like it's a possibility, and I just really, feel strongly to say that it is, that I, have experienced it, and I know many other people who have experienced it, and, so, again, it's just, there is hope, so, yeah.
It's the important first step, because if you think it's not possible, you're not really going to do all those things you need to do, because they're hard, they take effort, and you don't have that much energy or even emotional energy to pursue things. That if you think there's no point to it, you're not going to do it. And that's really a large part of the reason why I share these stories. I want to show people that it's worthwhile putting the effort in, because there is hope, and there is a light at the other end of the tunnel. Beth, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it's really brave of you and very inspiring to hear your journey. And it just goes to show that even people who have been sick for 10 years and more can make full recovery and stay recovered.
Mm-hmm.
But is there a
Definitely.
last final message you'd like to give to anyone listening?
Yeah, I guess the just last thing I'd like to say is to just really trust yourself, and another part, that I learned, that is the message I try to carry forth to others, is, that we all have a healer within ourselves, and, to begin to trust that voice, and sometimes, again, it's about getting to know ourselves and listen in a deeper way. But the wisdom that you have to heal is inside of you, and so just trust that and be open to receiving that guidance from within.
You also have a website, is that right?
Yes, yeah. I'm a holistic health practitioner, and I practice shamanic healing and some different forms of holistic wellness, and a lot of that really stemmed from my personal healing journey through fibromyalgia.
Yes.
And led me to really want to help others. So yes, I have my website is my name, BethTerrence.com.
Right.
And then I also have a blog. I do a lot of writing on transformation and healing, which is called The Heart of Awakening as well.
Thank you very much. Beth, I look forward to staying in touch with you, and I will, for anyone who'd like to find out more about what Beth does and the wisdom she shares, I'll have a link below this interview.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here. I enjoyed exploring with you.
No worries. Thank you, Beth.